Hey guys, this is Nerd Taku Podcast. I'm your host, Eli. With me is my co-host, Ben.
Hey guys, how's it going?
This is another movie review. We watch it so you don't have to. This week, we'll be reviewing 1917. Spoiler warnings ahead. Director of this film is Sam Mendes. Main cast is George McKay, Dean Charles Chapman. Supporting cast that are important to plot progression: Colin Firth, Mark Strong, Benedict Cumberbatch. Ben, I'm going to say this. This film, when we were talking about reviewing it, watching the trailer, I was just so mind-blowingly, what I'm saying? I was so mind-blowingly, convinced that this film was just going to be another generic war film. I was so convinced this was just going to be another war film that was going to have some action, some really good storylines, like based on true events or whatever. It's going to be probably a good historical film. But I was not expecting the craft that this man created. It's unspeakable. It was mind-blowing. Like, after watching that film, I didn't know what to say. That was such an amazing film.
I completely agree. I felt from the trailer that okay, it's another war film, which are good. I love them. Based on true event film, I love them. And so I was like, it's probably just going to be basic, generic, and that's why I rated it the 7 I think I gave it. Boy, was I proven wrong, because the beauty and the craft in this film, it not only had your intense war in it, but it also had the raw emotion. The cinematics was just phenomenal. I was really surprised with how well this movie turned out.
This film, when you start watching it, you don't feel like it's a film that's going to be very, very big. You feel like, oh yeah, it's these two guys going to be messengers. It's going to be something going along the lines of they're the birds who have to deliver the message, and you're just trying to figure out how they're going to do it in this time. And this is a time where you don't see a lot of war pics about it. World War One is a time where you don't see a lot of directors and a lot of films portraying this time of war. They usually do World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the Gulf War. You don't see World War One. So when we were talking about this, watching this film initially, that's what intrigued me. It was about World War One. It was before the generic, the amount of films that came out for World War II. So many people just regurgitated World War II films. A lot of great ones. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great ones, but you don't see World War One. So when we were watching it, I was just like, this is a story I was never expecting, and it was breathtaking.
Absolutely agree. So good.
But let me give you the summary. April 6th, 1917, as an infantry battalion assembles to wage war deep in enemy territory, 2 soldiers are assigned to race against time and deliver a message that will stop 1,600 men from walking straight into a deadly trap. That was pretty self-explanatory right there in that 2-sentence.
Yeah, that's basically what this story is. It's just 2 lieutenant corporals making their way to the other side of the battle to stop a general from getting ambushed by the Germans.
So this is the first time on IMDb I have actually noticed that they have multiple summaries for this film. Multiple synopsis for this film. And it's actually pretty interesting. So this one is, let me read the one that I see. Okay. On April 6th, 1917, aerial reconnaissance has observed that the German army, which has pulled back from a sector of the Western Front in northern France, is not in retreat, but has made a strategic withdrawal to the new Hindenburg line. where they are waiting to overwhelm the British with artillery. In the British trenches, with field telephone lines cut, two young British soldiers, Lance Corporals William Schofield, a veteran of Somme, and Tom Blake, are ordered by General Ernmore to carry a message to Mackenzie of the 2nd Battalion of the Devonshire Regiment, calling off a scheduled attack that would jeopardize the lives of 1,600 men, including Blake's brother, Lieutenant Joseph Blake.
Lance corporals, not lieutenant corporals. I said lieutenant corporals, which I realize doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But that was actually like a deeper synopsis. I'm actually really liking that they're actually getting deeper with their synopsises, not just doing two liners. Let's get into the list. Let's get into this. There's a lot to talk about. This film had a lot to bring.
Well, first off, this is the very first time I rated a film at a 10.
Same here. This is the first time we have rated this film a 10. Like, we both came to a consensus that this film is a 10. After watching this, we couldn't give it any other rating.
Nope.
So let's start with plot.
Well, obviously it's a 1.
Yeah, 1. I felt that the story was such a riveting journey where you had two young guys who had a mission that if they failed, they jeopardize 1,600 men. That's a lot of weight to put on two men's shoulders. That's a lot of weight. And to see these guys go out and do it without hesitation, just go out there and get that message out. Yes, Blake did go out because his brother was in that regiment and he didn't want him to die. So he was like booking it out of there. And Schofield was trying to like make him realize, like, hey, stop, calm down. We can make it there, but we can't rush it. And ultimately, in the end, Schofield is the only one. And with the story, it just gets deeper and deeper where you realize the small acts they do throughout the plot changed dramatically when that plane crashed. If they didn't help that dude, they'd both probably be alive right now. So like just small little intricate things throughout the story, their small talk and just all the supporting cast that brought these characters to life and to bring the story all together. It was just so good.
I agree 100%. It starts out just them laying down, enjoying their leisure time, and then they get called by a lieutenant to go see General Aaronmore to get orders, and his orders are for them to cross the plains cross the enemy line where a battle had literally just taken place to deliver these messages to Colonel Mackenzie. And the Schofield is hesitant because people literally just got shot from this line. And Aaron Moore says, it's fine. Our aerials have shown that there's nothing there. And so they have to take on this mission, just the two of them, to go to the other side of the battlefield to try to get these orders to stop the attack to Colonel Mackenzie. It's this progressive story of these two, and like you said, that plane crash, if they hadn't done the right thing, they both may have survived, but because they took the German out of his plane and tried to help him, the German ended up stabbing Blake, and Blake dies in Schofield's arms. With that, Schofield felt like he just wanted to go back to base, but Blake convinces him as he's dying to make sure that you get these orders to my brother, save my brother. That progresses the plot even more. And then this other group of soldiers just kind of comes out of nowhere. And Collins is the commanding officer of this group of people, and they pick him up and take him as far as they can, but the bridge is out, and so he gets out to when they can't go across the bridge, he gets out to cross on foot so he can get there on time. And Collins gives him a line that makes sure there are witnesses. Some men just want the fight. Like that line right there, that's what pushes the plot forward is Collins's line of make sure there are people there because some men just want the fight. And so he gets out and he starts going on foot, gets attacked by the sniper up in the tower, ends up getting shot as he opens the door in the building where the sniper was and blacking out. And that takes time off the clock to get him to those front lines. And he wakes up dazed and confused, and there's this fire blazing and these lights going off, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he knows that he has to move forward and he has to keep going. So he keeps going. And then he meets the woman and the baby, and she helps kind of patch up his head a little bit. And he looks at the time and he's like, "Ugh, I gotta go. I gotta go now." But she doesn't want him to leave because she wants protection, but he has to go. So he goes forward again, finds, ends up running through this place that is surrounded by Germans. He drops his weapon, but he has to book it. He runs and he runs and he runs, and like this, the story just continuously progresses. There's no slow movement. After they wake up, that's the slowest part of the film. Then he talks to Aaron Moore, and then after that, it just keeps going and building and going. There's nothing slow. There's nothing that really makes you want to turn your attention away. I had no idea how long I had been watching this film for. There was that part where we wanted to get that quote, so we paused it and rewound.
Yeah.
And it turns out we were 51 minutes into the film already. I thought we'd have only gone about 30,
Yeah.
and it was 51 minutes. And then by the time we got to the end of the film, I was just like, what? That was 2 hours long? That didn't feel like 2 hours at all.
No, it did not feel like that was 2 hours. That whole movie felt like it was just like a fever dream almost of, like, time, because it felt like it was like a 30-minute thing. It wasn't anything 2 hours at all to us. Also, I love the fact that the little dialogues brought the story together so well. Interested with the characters and the plot. Just the small nuanced stories, like him talking about the trees and the fruits, and it's like then later down he realizes he sees the petals in the water and those are from the same trees, and it's everything's connecting.
Everything just kind of meshed, and it progressed so well that I never once looked at my phone. It went I know my notifications were going off. I saw them in the corner of my eye, but I did not once pick up my phone at all. And as he's finally getting to the front lines, he finally gets there and he's trying to find Colonel Mackenzie, and he can't because he's clear on the other side of the battlefield and he's trying to get past all these people. And then he gets to almost where Colonel Mackenzie is, but he can't get through. So he has to go over the wall and run on the battlefield. And as he's running, there was no staging. It's like he said, okay, Schofield, it's like the director said, Schofield, you're going to run. And he took off. Then he says, all right, everybody else run. Just keep running. No matter what, don't stop. Just keep running. Because he runs into people like it wasn't even staged. He just ran into him as if it was actually happening. And then he finally gets to the colonel. And those two guys at the door won't let him in. And he fights his way past those lieutenants to get into the room. And he sits there until Colonel Mackenzie listens to what he has to say and takes those papers and reads them because they're direct orders from General Aaron Moore. This plot was just so intense, so good, so captivating that I couldn't give it anything less than a 1. It was just smooth, so good.
Acting and voice acting.
I gave that a 1, obviously. We gave it a 10.
Yeah,
Everything's a 1.
everything's a 1. We're gonna just go down the list. I found that Schofield was such like when you start watching this film, you feel like Schofield was going to be the supporting. For me, it was going to be the supporting actor. Yeah, he was on the cover, but we didn't know what happened to Blake. We didn't know if Blake was going to be there at all or nothing. So, okay, the story started, and I was like, oh, he sounds like he's going to be the support. But then Blake dies, and you see the stellar cast that came out of this. George McKay, he brought a stellar performance to Schofield. No, the amount of stress his character was feeling throughout the whole story, the amount of injury he had from that concussion, it was just a severe concussion. He was dazed and like malnourished, and he was giving everything he got. His body looked destroyed, and George McKay just gave the performance that was his best performance he's ever given, in my opinion. And the stellar cast that brought this whole story together and helped his acting grow. Colin Firth was General Moore, and he did the King's Speech. So, like, this guy, he just brought the performance to bring these two guys, George McKay and Dean Charles Chapman, up to another level. And then Mark Strong, he was the second captain who was running this whole battalion towards the battle that Schofield had to get to, and he helped him get there and made him aware that when he talks to Mackenzie, he has to have an audience, or Mackenzie's just going to ignore him. And then Benedict Cumberbatch, he just brought Mackenzie to life and fought with Schofield, and it was so real and intense. And you were like, is he going to accept it? Is he going to believe him? And then Schofield comes out and was like saying, all your men will die. This you will kill all your men. They've been planning this for months. This is a tactical retreat. And he finally reads the letter and stops it. He was like, last man standing wins the war. Now go get fixed up. Get the fuck away from me, basically. So, like, this cast was so good. And George McKay really was the spearhead of this.
I agree. You could see just the raw emotion in George McKay as he's going through all these trials, and just his facial expressions, the way he talked, how tired he looked. You could see he was tired. When he finally got to that camp after going down the water and crawling over the dead bodies in the water, getting to the camp, listening to them sing, and he just leans against the tree and collapses. And then he's completely out of it when people are trying to talk to him. And then he finally responds with what he's there for. Holy shit. He sold you, man. You could see how tired he was. And Colin Firth, I didn't even realize that was him. The makeup was so great that from the distance when they first enter, you can't see that that's Colin Firth until he starts talking. And then you're like, "Oh, I know that voice because it's distinct. You know Colin Firth's voice." The way he delivered his lines, the way that he portrayed himself as an actual general. He is in charge, and this is what you're going to do. It was awe-inspiring. And like you said, he just kind of comes into view. All you see is his legs, but you can feel his demanding presence as a captain. He's like, well, who are you? We saw the fire, we saw the flames. And Schofield responds, I have to get here. I have a message from the general and I have to get here. And then he, you know, well, we have room, jump in. And then they get to the bridge, and just the way he delivered his make sure there's witnesses, some men just want the fight line, you could see that he's been through some shit and he knows there are people out there who just don't care about orders. All they want is the glory of winning this fight. And I'm pretty sure he knows Mackenzie enough to know that if you don't have people there to show that you have these orders, he's not going to follow them.
Yeah.
And then you get to the want and the need to get to Blake's brother. Dean Charles Chapman saves Schofield after the place blows up. you could see the determination in his eyes and hear it in his voice. I have to get these where they need to go. I have to save my brother. That was his biggest motivation, not the 1600 troops, but his brother. As you said, Cumberbatch just tied it all together by being the I'm in charge here dictator that he was for that camp. And he's just taken care of. Now fuck off. That line, it's just you can feel he's in charge and he's not happy with these orders because he felt like this was the day they were going to win. And then he finds out there's an ambush and that he's not going to win. And so now they have to do it all over again. And he's pissed. And you can see it in his eyes. You can hear it in his voice. It's just, wow.
These supporting cast members had such a short time on the screen. If you look at the list on IMDb, you can see that Colin Firth has like the most. He's the highest recognized out of those three major supporting cast, because Benedict Cumberbatch is like near the bottom because he has such a short part. That one like 4-minute, 3-minute scene like made the movie. It made the character so much better.
It tied it all together because this was them working to get there. Blake ended up dying and Schofield made it. He throws the orders in Mackenzie's face and says, "You have to listen to these. This comes from the general. Listen to it." And he finally made it there. And Mackenzie is trying to deny anything. Otherwise, Blake would have died for nothing.
Exactly. Character development.
Oh, yeah, one.
Yeah. Okay, so the only character that fully developed was Schofield. This was a development story for him. And it started off with him going, "Yeah, I don't want to do this. Why the hell did you drag me into this?" And Blake's like, "Hey, if I knew what I was getting dragging you into this, I would have never asked you." And that was right after the explosion with the rat running over the line and blowing up and almost killing Schofield. But he realized, okay, I just got to keep going, keep moving. And Blake's like trying to talk to him. He's like, "Shut up, just go, just do it. Let's go." And they kept moving. And then the whole story changed when Blake died. And you saw Schofield just, he's grieving in like the most solemn way possible on the back of that truck when they're all talking, giving shit, like calling each other little bastards and all that, and like saying "fuck you." He's sitting there solemnly, just in his own thought, in his own world. And it's just, you can just feel it. You can just resonate with him that he's deeply hurting, but he doesn't have time to grieve. And that's what Captain Smith said to him. Mark Strong's character. He said, "You don't have time to grieve. You gotta keep moving. You gotta keep moving and keep going." And he took the time to grieve on the back of that truck, and it was such an amazing moment because that character grew so well. And then him going through all this, he grew to be resilient, tough, ambitious, and just thick-headed and never give up. Him running through that field showed him that his courage to stop this, his courage to not let anyone die was really a deciding factor for his whole character development. He just kept going and it never ended. It never stopped. It was amazing. I felt so honored to watch this type of character development through one character. There's so many characters that talk throughout this film, but the one character, Schofield, made the whole movie. It like you could talk about other people's development, but it doesn't beat Schofield's. Schofield's is outstanding.
I completely agree. You like took everything I was gonna say. But Schofield, like you said, started out with "I don't want to do this," and then he's trying to tell Blake, "Wait, what do you do? We could wait till night to make sure there's coverage of the dark and make sure there's nobody there." And Blake just wants to go, so Schofield follows him. And then Blake dies, and that just it puts perspective into Schofield's what he has to do. He has to deliver this message now because Blake would have died for nothing. And Blake was his best friend. So he had to do this. He just marches forward to get this done. And when he has to sneak through that infested area with the fire going, when he has to go through that and sneak past these German soldiers and then ends up face to face with one and he ends up fighting him and choking him out, that was like one of the hardest things for him to do because as he's going through, he's only killed one other person, and that's the German that stabbed Blake. And then he has to hand-to-hand combat, not with a gun. You're not far away. He has to use his hands and choke this soldier out. It's not until after he finds a hiding spot that you can see how much that actually affected him. And then he falls into the water, crawls over those soldiers, gets on land, and then he breaks down. It's just so much for him. He starts crying, he starts heaving, dry heaving. It's just all of this is finally catching up to him, and he's finally feeling it. And like you said, Schofield made this film. It was all him. There was no other development at all. Say what you will, there was no development except through Schofield. But because his was so strong and this film was focused so much on just him, it deserved a one. You just have to watch it to see why we feel this way. It can't be put into words. It's just outstanding performance.
One thing about the character development that I loved was that he kept his promise. He kept his promise to Blake that he would write to his mother. And I found so much honor in what he asked Lieutenant Blake. He's like, "May I write your mother? Write to your mother because Blake asked me to." And Joseph Blake's like, "Yes, you may." And that moment of just understanding that he was a good man, you should be proud of your brother. It just hit so hard because it's like Lieutenant Blake was so excited to see his brother, and then he couldn't. But Schofield took the courage to tell him the truth of his brother that he was my best friend, and we fought together, and he was a good man. And I want you to write to your mother as he asked me to. Ah, so good. So
So
good.
powerful.
Sound and music.
A one.
Oh my gosh. This movie, the sound and music in this is just so breathtaking. Like the first instance of it is them walking to the general's like bunker, his room, where you see like the dun 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 dun, like they're going in, it's like what's happening, and then the silence, the deafening silence of them just talking to the general about the mission, and then the music picking up a little bit to feel the seriousness. And then when they're looking over that bunker for the first time, when they got to the German line, it's like dun 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 dun, a whole orchestra piece, and it's like they go dun dun dun, nothing. It's like what? Nothing? Seriously? Nothing? Throughout this whole film, they did such a good job. Like in that scene when they're showing through the window, the orchestrate piece with the lighting and him running. It's like it was just the music was on beat, on par. It was so amazing that they timed it perfectly with the sounds, the music, and the orchestra. Mind you, the orchestra was just the most beautiful thing ever throughout a war film.
I completely agree. When every time there was an intense part, the music intensified, it kept you pulled in. They're crossing this battlefield that had just happened and they're going into their stealth mode because they just passed their lines and now getting to enemy lines. And that music just intensify. And like you said, they go to look in the trenches of the enemy field and the music just abrupt stop. It was so fucking good. And it's just he's running through it. The music just matched every part perfectly. There was intense, there was calm, there was it was just so good. I can't put it into words. It was so breathtaking. And when he's crossing those bodies, you could hear the sloshing and the crunching of the old bones and
Oh,
the the faces rubbing against the log. You could hear that sound, and it was just like, oh, so gross, but it's just it's perfect because it's what's there. It's the atmosphere. It's all the surroundings. Like they made it perfectly.
they the part where he sticks his hand in that dead dude's
And you just
chest,
hear that.
the crunch. Yeah, it's like, oh, they were so good at the realism of the sounds of the whole atmosphere of
Or
it.
when
So,
he cuts his hand on the barbed wire and you hear that.
yep.
Oh man, it's just
Uh,
it
it
was
was
so good.
it was so good, so hard, but it was so good. Cinematography, dude. This is the reason why we thought this was a 10 out of 10. This we both talked about this a little bit before we got into this. The one shot film design of the whole film was designed by a one shot take type of style, and it's so good. It's so amazing where they use the scenery as your transitional shots. They do a lot of panning, they do a lot of open space shots, they do a lot of third person, bird's eye view, some first persons. They do two cuts in this film. One when he gets knocked out from the bullet hitting his helmet and he falls down the stairs, and then at the end when they cut to the credits, only time it cuts. And you can argue about the cut in the middle of the film because it wakes up like it's not like he's waking up from opening up like the sun. His eyes opening. It's like, holy crap, it's so good. This director, Sam Mendes, he got one of the best cinematographers in the game and made a film. It was very ambitious. This whole project was a very ambitious project, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it in the filming. Just the one shot takes, the realism takes, the close ups they did on their feet where they're panning down and up. It was just so good. I could not describe to you my feelings towards these shots. It was just so amazing and like mesmerizing and out of this world spectacular.
Oh man, especially when you literally felt like you were in a drone. You were watching this from a drone and it was just following characters as it went through it. Going around characters, going across the battlefield, and they have to go across this fence line and there's the guy in the fencing, or there's the guy in the mud and his hand is up above, and the camera just follows that dirt, and then you see the hand, and then you see what they see on the other side of this hill. It's oh man. Not to mention they're in the buildings, and like Schofield and Blake are searching this farmhouse and there's nothing in there, but you see Schofield on the right and Blake in the yard out in the field, and there's just a window, and Blake is standing right there. Schofield is closer to you, and you can see both characters as if you're a third person in that room. It was so fucking good. And then when Schofield wakes up and there's the lights going off, the flares going off in the outside, and it pans from where he was standing through the window of this building where the sniper was, and you just continue out this window, and then Schofield is just walking in the field. Like, who thinks of that? How do you get a brainchild like this just to follow the character as if you are there? It's like you are a third person. Like it makes me think of second person shooters where you are following, but you're not holding the gun. You're following first and third person shooters. I'm like, that's exactly what I felt watching this film. It was so good, so well done.
Dude, the guy who did the cinematography for this film, Roger Deakins, he is world renowned as a cinematographer. He actually won an Oscar for this film. He won an Oscar for 1917. That's how good the shooting was in this film. It is spectacular. He's been nominated for he won Best Cinematographer for 1917, Blade Runner 2049. He was nominated for Unbroken, Prisoners, Skyfall, True Grit, Old Country for Old Men, Brother Where Art Thou, Fargo, Shawshank Redemption. Like this guy knew what he was doing when he made this film, like cinematography wise. He is just so good at what he's doing. He is just so amazing at his shot selections, his way of manipulating the camera to make it so that no cut happened. It was all one shot, seamless take. And yeah, there's probably like they probably spent hours figuring out the seamless takes where they had to do it, but it was just so good. It was amazing, and I loved it. Directing,
A one, of course.
dude, one all the way.
I feel like Sam Mendes knew exactly what he was looking for when he directed this film. He said, I am focusing, I want the camera to do one thing. That's a one shot all the way through. We're going to be following this character all the way through his journey. And he knew that's what he wanted. And when they do the running scene, I I seriously feel like he's like, okay, this is how it's gonna work. George, you're gonna run. And he didn't tell George that he's gonna make the other cast run when he says they're gonna run. So he's like, George, I want you to go up here and just start running. And he goes, action. And they all run, or he runs. And then he's like, okay, now the rest of you. And then the rest of the cast runs. And that's how they got I feel like that's how he got the authenticity of crashing into people and getting back up and continue running, because he crashed into like 3 different people trying to get these orders to Mackenzie. I I just it was so fucking good. It was phenomenal.
Dude, Sam Mendes is by far one of like the underrated directors of this like whole project. Like he man, this director filmed Jarhead. It was about the Iraqi war, and it was a very like ambitious take on an ambitious film, but he took this project and was like, "Hey, I'm going to just do what I want to do." And he directed this film so well. It was just so amazing. A lot of Mendes's work has been like a lot of underrated films. Like he did American Beauty, Jarhead, he did Away We Go, he directed Skyfall. He's directed 2 of the newest James Bond films. And like those were like considered some of the world-renowned best Bond films that have been come out in a long time. So this director knew he was doing. He did a very ambitious project, and it turned out to be amazing. And I would recommend this to anyone if you just solely on the directing. Sam Mendes knew what he was doing, and it's amazing.
He also co-wrote this one, so he really knew what he was doing.
Yeah, co-writing and directing. Oh yeah, this man just leaps and bounds an amazing director.
He said, "This is my dream. This is what I picture," and it was delivered beautifully.
Attraction.
1.
Dude, this film, from the moment you start watching, it intrigued me. It really intrigued me from the beginning. And then throughout this whole film, I just never wanted to look away. Like I maybe looked away to look at my phone to like take notes because I was taking notes on my phone through the film. My computer died. But like I never looked at the time, never lost attention to this film. it was so amazing how attractive this film was just by the scenery, the acting, the plots, the character development. It was just so awe-inspiring. And I just found this to be a film where I was on the edge of my seat throughout the whole thing. I do not want to miss a second of it. I wanted to use the bathroom and I was like, no, I am not moving. It's this good of a film. I'm not moving.
I agree. Like from the very opening of this, it pans out from that flower field. It's just a flower, and then it pans away. Then you see Blake laying in the field, and then you see Schofield leaning against a tree. And I'm like, it's an interesting way to start. And I felt like, okay, but if it starts like that, it's just gonna be slow. Like the beginning will just be nothing. And then it wasn't. They get into the bunker, start talking with Aaron more, and then it's just music intensifies it in scene after shot, shot after shot after shot. Just everything kept building. There was nothing that slowed down. I think the slowest part after the beginning was when he got into the room with the girl and the baby and kind of showed that loving side of himself that still cares for people, but that was to kind of progress his character to show that Schofield wants people to live. He wants to help these people. And so it was important to the story. It was kind of slow, but that was the only thing that I felt was slow. Other than that, it just kept building on top of itself. There was nothing that made me want to look away. Like I said, my phone notifications were going off. I didn't look at it once. The only thing I was doing was typing notes on my computer. And even then, by the time I was done typing, I had so many punctuation and grammar mistakes because I couldn't look away from the film. My eyes were glued to that screen and I did not want to get up. It was just so good.
Dialogue.
Oh man, there were some really good ones in this.
Dude, there was a quote from the general. Down to Gehenna or up to the throne. He who travels fastest travels alone. He said to these to Schofield and Blake when they asked, "What is it? Just us two?" And the quote just saying that was like he's just saying, "I need this to be quick. I can't have a man of 40 take a message for where a man alone could do it." And it's just like, oh my gosh, awe-inspiring. It's just so good. There was a line that I loved. It was just funny to me. It was Blake said it in the cave in the trenches. He's like, "Damn, those rats are bigger than ours." I thought that was just so good. I'm like, he recognizes like, "Damn, we got rats too, but not this big." Damn.
I think one of my favorite deliveries from Blake was when they're talking about metals and Schofield says, "It's just a piece of tin." And Blake comes back with a witty retort. "It's not just tin. It's got a ribbon as well."
I love that. I love it. I love the small talk that they did
Right? It
in the
made you
beginning.
connect to them so well. It was just it was like they were this is
This is life.
it's they're friends in a war. And it wasn't written, it wasn't they wrote them lines and said you have to deliver these lines. It was like they said, "You know what? I'm going to give you free reign here. Just give some witty banter." And that's what they did as they were crossing this beautiful field of trees. There was just a
Yeah.
bunch of witty banter. It was like two friends talking, not lines that had to be delivered. It made you connect to them so well.
Yeah, when Blake was talking about those trees and how they grow fruit because his family used to run a fruit farm, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of nice. It's kind of a little nice little banter right there." And then like them talking about the house and how it felt creepy and like him getting the milk. It's just like it's just small little banter. And then when Schofield was grieving, those guys just bantering back and forth towards each other, like, "Oh, you little shit." They're all just talking. It's like I love the dialogue they gave. There was another quote by Colonel McKenzie.
The quote is, "Hope is a dangerous thing. There's only one way this war ends. Last man standing."
Yes, exactly. And that quote just resonates throughout the whole war. It resonates through the whole movie. That last man standing wins, and that's what it is. And it was just so good.
General McKenzie actually gave that line because he said before that he had said, "I had hoped today would be a good day, finally ending this." And then he gets the orders and he says, "Hope is a dangerous thing," which is just like, oh shit. Yes, it is.
Hope is a dangerous thing. Bringing back to like some of our most favorite quotes through our films that we've watched. It's like the two worst words to hear is a good job. Like
Exactly.
hope is a dangerous thing. It just brings back that, and it's like, oh, it just hits. These films are just showing that like you got to double down and work hard, and you can't take the recognition of like hopes and dreams. You just got to just press forward and see the results. Oh, it's just so good in the writing.
One
They just
one quote that really pulled at my heart was when Blake was dying and the last thing he says is, "Could you write my mom for me? Tell her I wasn't afraid."
oh
I I literally teared up. I'm not even lying. I had to take my hands and wipe my eyes so I could continue watching this film. It was, oh man, it was so hard to watch because you thought that these two were gonna make it together throughout the whole beginning. They're stuck on each other like freaking glue. And then that damn German, after they saved him, stabs Blake. Like you're not expecting that. And then he dies in Schofield's arms and says, "Could you write my mom for me? Tell her I wasn't afraid." Oh man, that hurt. Hurt. I'm kind of choking up right now even mentioning this line. It was and it was delivered so well that you could feel how just sad both of them were that this was the end for Blake.
dude, that whole scene, it was a moment to like take the deep breath of solemn and both grieving because you knew when that happened, you know when he got stabbed, it was like, okay, this is the end. This is time's up. Blake's not gonna make it. The only way he's gonna make it is a miracle. And when he was trying to move him, it was like he was in pain. He wouldn't move. He was being stubborn. And then he says the lines, "Wait, am I dying? Am I gonna die?" And then Schofield's like, "Yes, I believe so.
But it wasn't just yes, it was choked
I
up.
believe." Yeah, and he's like, "I believe so." And he
Yes.
was like just holding him, and it's like, and then he told him right to his mother, and then pull out a photo of his brother to point out his brother.
Pointed out his brother and then stuck it to his heart before he
Yep,
died.
and then it's like that's that was heavy. That was so heavy. I teared up too, and man, that's just something that you can't fake it. You give all you got in those lines. It just became so it resonated with us so deeply.
I do not know how you deliver a line that powerfully. I'm not an actor. I know I'm not an actor, but to give a line like that and make you tear up, how do you do that? How do you deliver your lines so well that you make your audience cry?
So there's a famous quote by an actress, Dakota Fanning. She was in Man of Fire with Denzel Washington. She was 9 years old, and they told her she had to find a way to cry when Denzel Washington's like dying and all that. And she imagined her her goldfish dying, her first ever goldfish dying, and it broke her heart. So these guys had some moment, something that to bring them to that place of sorrow. And that's what I see in acting is like the actors who can deliver the message beautifully have gone through something traumatic in some way. Even if it's small, like Dakota Fanning, she was 9. The most traumatic thing to her was a goldfish. These guys have probably seen friends die. They probably have had family members die, and they just took that and just brought it in. So delivering these lines, 10 out of 10, so good.
However it's done, it was done so well. It made me cry.
Yeah. Scenery.
Obviously a 1.
This scenery was magnificent. The detail they gave through the war, through the struggles, through the bodies. How many bodies were on the ground? Like the decaying parts of it, the ravens on top of some of the bodies and the mud puddles. Like you just saw the realism that they brought into this war. World War One was messy. World War Two, people were like, oh, it wasn't too bad. World War One was when it was messy. It was gross. It was all trench work. It was all bloody and gruesome. It was so real. It felt so magnificent, and it felt so so heart-wrenching to see all this death. And I'll say this. I felt when they would hit some of the dead bodies or when Schofield crawled over the bodies, I cringed because the scenery was so good and it just made you feel like, oh no. It just made you feel like the war is there right in front of you. And it was just so hard to go through, but it was so worth it because in the end, you saw this magnificent scene when Schofield's sitting on that tree, just leaning back, and you see the sun. Ah, such a good scene to end. And that's where it started on a tree, leaning, closing his eyes. It was so good to wrap the sceneries together. Oh, I loved it. Loved it so much.
One scene that stuck with me so well is the first time Schofield starts walking through this abandoned city, and he's walking, and then there's a red glare, and then he gets closer and closer and closer, and it's just a blaze of a building on fire just right there. And then you see a shadow of somebody slowly approaching Schofield. They start kind of walking towards each other, and then a shot goes off, and Schofield just starts booking it because that is a German, and he has to run. But that blazing building was just immaculate. Not to mention all the even before that, when Schofield is looking out the window, just before the camera pans out the window and follows Schofield, there's flares going off in the air. It's dark, but you've got these flares going off, brightening up this area, making it all colorful, shadowing. It's just immaculate. And like you said, there were just bodies strewn everywhere throughout this battlefield. There was the guy in the barbed wire fence, and Schofield kind of stops and looks at him for a second. You don't see his face, and the camera just goes around that dead body, and they start going into this giant ravine that bombs had made, filled with mud, and there's just bodies all strewn out throughout that water, just kind of floating. That's where the ravens were eating those bodies. It was just, it just showed you, like you said, how messy and grotesque World War One actually was.
World War One was when they did a lot of experimental stuff so that World War Two could progress better when it happened. But it's like, yeah, that's where you saw experimental gas masks, flamethrowers. It was a messy war, and they showed it off beautifully with the explosions, the craters in the ground. It was just so
You even
magnificent.
had horses from the cavalry because they still had a cavalry then.
Yeah, and you saw like the flies coming off the horses. It's like, oh my gosh, the details they gave, the details in the scenery was so good. Finally, my guy, recommended.
Of course, I recommend this. I will recommend this to anybody, whether you're a history buff, you're just kind of looking for a movie to watch, you're not really into documentary movies. I don't care. I'm going to tell you to go watch 1917. It is not a waste of your time. The cinematics are amazing. The music matches the scenes perfectly. Your acting is absolutely outstanding. Your directing was phenomenal. Your dialogue was great with the witty banter back and forth. The plot in and of itself was just stupendous. I highly, very highly recommend this to everybody listening to this podcast. Go watch 1917. You will not regret it.
I agree with you. I believe that this film is a monumental masterpiece to where I personally told myself in my whole life I would never give a film, a game, an anime, never a 10. This checked everything off in the boxes. It checked everything off in the acting, the character development, the story, the cinematography, the lines, everything. It just covered all the bases that makes a film worth watching. If you can zone out and not even pay attention to your phone, pay attention to anything else than just the film, that's worthy of a 10 because this film made you transcend time and forget that you were in a 2-hour trance. Felt 20 minutes and you got out of it and went, wow, I spent like 45 minutes watching this. Nope, 2 hours later, you finished an amazing film that made you feel every emotion in the book. This film highly recommended to anyone. Anyone willing to watch this, go watch it. Now, I'm going to give an overall. Overall, this film was breathtaking. Just start from finish. I will say that this film, for both of us, intensely brought out every raw emotion we felt in a film. And I will honestly say that these two main characters, Blake and Schofield, made us feel emotions we never wanted to feel through a film. And it just made us feel good at the end, made us cry, made us angry, made us feel joy, made us feel sorrow, and made us feel misery and grief. With the stellar supporting cast, the amazing cinematography work from this amazing crew, and the directing of Sam Mendes, I will say that this film is top tier material, top tier quality work. And I cannot say anything else but great film. We watched it, so you don't have to, but we recommend you do.
I agree. This film was outstanding. I gave it my first 10 and it was very well deserved. The acting made you feel fully connected to Schofield as he's attempting to make it to the front lines to get this message to Mackenzie. George McKay shows the anger, the frustration, fear, sadness, and sheer exhaustion as he's trying to complete this mission. The cinematography was just breathtaking. There there were just no transitions. Well, there were transitions, but there were no cuts. It was every scene was just one fluid motion and it was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. The film had one or two slow parts, but other than that, it just kept building and building and building all the way up. I never once looked at anything other than this screen. I had to keep my focus on this screen because it was just an outstanding film. And again, it doesn't matter if this is not your type of film, if war films aren't your thing, if true stories aren't your thing, it doesn't matter. I cannot recommend this film more. It's so fucking good.
As we wrap up this amazing breakdown of this film, this review, I'd like to say thank you, Ben, for going on this journey with me. This film was just such a journey, and I don't think watching it by myself, I would have felt the same watching it without someone else there. And I felt so good when we watched it together.
I agree. It was just I don't know what it was, but emotions all around, just so fucking good.
Yeah, no, it was just amazing. Now, let's talk about next week's episode. This trailer we watched for the 2002 mystery drama thriller Insomnia.
Oh boy, do I have some thoughts.
Hot mama.
Can I just ask, what is with the voiceover in early 2000 films for intense movies?
I don't
They
know.
brought him to solve an unspeakable crime. Now the game has turned deadlier than ever imagined. Like, really? And
Really?
the way it like shutter cut in out in out in out in out in out in out, and then you got this freaking voiceovers, and it's just like what the hell am I watching right now? Just make a smooth transition. Like, let me see what the trailer is. Stop talking and let me see what's going on. I didn't feel like it's a film that I'd like watching, so I just have to do it for the podcast. I scored it at a 4, my guy.
Okay, so when I was watching it, I laughed at that beginning thing because I remember back in the day those voiceovers, and it's like, in a world where
This and
They
this
were-
happens. Low cringy voice.
dude, it was so good. But this trailer was everywhere. It was a mess, shutter cuts everywhere. I give it a 5 because here's the thing: you could see who the actors were: Al Pacino, Robin Williams, Hilary Swank, and that's it. And it's like, okay, but I had no connection. Like, Al Pacino looked like he was the detective, and Robin Williams was running. Yeah. So it was a mess. I give it a 5. I give it a straight 5. It's just not resonating with me at all.
I feel like the trailer basically gave you all the information you need. I think that it literally just gave you the story. So I don't know if there's a point in watching it. I'll watch it, but I feel like the trailer just told you everything. It gave you the whole film. It was a 3-minute trailer.
Dude, trailers that are 3 minutes are kind of a joke. Keep it to a minute and a half, move on. But no, that's what we're going to be reviewing next week, Insomnia. So thanks, Ben, for coming on. As always, I appreciate you.
Of course, I love doing these, and I can't wait for more.
So thanks, guys, for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. Go watch our other episodes. We have 11 other episodes before this. You should watch all our episodes. They are all great in their own ways. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.
See you guys.